Hey YouTube, what's going on? It's Rob with Sprayer Splash Fragrance Reviews. Thank you so much for coming back and checking out the channel. I've got a new series, it's called Catch Me If You Can, where the focus is vintage and hard to find fragrances. I kicked off the first video and this is the follow-up. In that first video, I focused on my most worn fragrances from the early 90s. In this one, we're going to follow it up with my most worn fragrances from 95 through the end of that decade. So if you're interested in finding out what those fragrances were, stay tuned. First fragrance is a 1995 release from the house of Givenchy. This is Xeryus Rouge. I love this fragrance. I'm just going to just go ahead and say it. I love this fragrance. I've always loved it. It was a great fragrance for me as far as date nights. I wore it a lot. I was wearing this fragrance when I met my wife, if I'm not mistaken. Just works. It's a sexy, warm, spicy fragrance that's really good for the colder months. It's got notes of orange, tarragon, cedar, and pimento, believe it or not. I think the nose is Annick Bernardo. I can't say for certain, but I think she's the nose on this one. If I'm wrong, I'll put all of the details on the screen. This is the vintage bottle. It comes in a newer bottle, and I'll also put the bottle on the screen so you can see what the new bottle looks like. It's one that you can still cop. The vintage bottle, I'm not gonna say it's hard to find, but it's a little bit more expensive. The newer bottle I think is still readily available. I don't know strength-wise if there's a difference from the vintage to the current formulation, but I do know that this was a good performing fragrance. It wasn't beast mode, but it was a good performing fragrance and one that you can cop in the vintage bottles now under 100 bucks. I want to say in the $60 to $80 range for a 3.4. You can still find this fragrance. One that I really enjoy and one that you should check out if you've never checked this one out. Again, from the house of Givenchy, this is Xeryus Rouge. Next fragrance is a 1992 release from the house of Joseph Abboud. Joseph Abboud. I've had this fragrance in multiple lists in the past, and it's one that I still speak on because I think it's a really good fragrance. I remember when I first smelled it, it was in a department store that I don't think actually still exists. It was called Mark Shell. But orange and musk. I won't get into any other notes. It's basically a citrus and musk fragrance. I think it's the precursor to Terre de Hermes. Really well done. Still smells current. Doesn't smell dated at all, in my humble opinion. It's one that you can still actually find on eBay. It comes in two bottle sizes. I think a 1.6 and a 3.4. And the 1.6 can be found for about 26 bucks. 3.4 is about 75 bucks if you ever find it. It's a low fill bottle. You're gonna notice that. So whenever you see the bottles, the fill is not gonna be all the way to the top. I don't know if that's because of the age of the fragrance or not, but that's what you're gonna typically see. Great citrus fragrance. It is classy, works good in colder weather, believe it or not, versus being like a fragrance that's made for warm weather. This is, to me, more of a colder weather fragrance. You gotta check it out if you've never checked it out. I wore this a lot back in the late 90s. Joseph Abboud by Joseph Abboud. 1989 release from the house of Jil Sander. This is Feeling Man. This is one of my favorite fragrances of all time. All time, I love this fragrance. How could I describe it? It is pretty much a kind of like an aromatic fragrance. It's got lavender, it's got raspberry, it's got tonka for sweetness. It's kind of balsamic. It's just really well done, very versatile. You can dress it up or dress it down. It's not dated at all, in my humble opinion. However, this is one of those fragrances where price-wise, they kind of get you. $150 is like the starting price. I typically see 3.4s. I never really see 1.7s. However, if you were to decide that this is a fragrance that you wanted to hunt for, I do often see the minis. I will often see minis on eBay and they are priced somewhere at about 20 bucks. So if you might be interested in like trying to check this fragrance out, you can always try to track down a mini and see if it's worth your time, energy, and effort to get a full bottle. but one that I thoroughly love. I think it's got a lot of positive feedback, and there are a lot of people that really enjoy the fragrance and speak highly of it. Doesn't smell dated again to me at all. I think it's a very versatile fragrance, one that would work great today. One of my faves, Jil Sander Feeling Man. 1994 release from the house of Dolce & Gabbana. This is Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme, the legendary sticker bottle, okay? Great tobacco and lavender fragrance. Masculine, classy, sexy, well blended, well put together, just a incredible release. However, performance has kind of done a dip in the latter years, and people will often try to seek out the sticker bottle. Do I think it's necessary? If you love the fragrance, yes. If you've never really gotten to the fragrance or smelled the fragrance, I don't think it's necessary. You might be better served just trying to get a current bottle of the fragrance. But it's an amazing fragrance. One that I wore a lot in the late 90s. And I didn't really smell it until like about 96. But when I smelled it, I just remembered like how just like incredibly classy and sexy at the same time I thought the fragrance smelled. Something about the way the fragrance is put together, it just works. And if you can get the sticker bottle, performs better. It's fuller, it's richer, it's deeper. It just works, man. The only thing is with the sticker bottle, as many of you know, you kind of get put over a barrel. I think this bottle size for this, I think the bottle size for the fragrance was 2.5, 3.4, and 4.2. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I typically see the 2.5 bottles online, and they start at about $150 for the sticker bottle. Then they go up. So it's pricey for a vintage designer fragrance, but that's what happens. So, you know, you have to make the decision on if this is something you want to track down or if it's even worth your time. But one that I wore a lot in the late 90s and one that I'm highly fond of, Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme. 1997 release from the house of Aficionado fragrances. This is Cigar. Really well done tobacco fragrance, one I wore a lot in the late 90s. I got it as a gift. I think it was Christmas of 97 from my sister. She thought the fragrance smelled amazing and she gifted this to me. One that I'm surprised more people don't talk about from the late 90s. It's that good to me as a designer release, and I've never really seen anybody talk about it. Now, this is not the cigar fragrance you see in Marshalls or TJ Maxx that looks like a cigar and top of the cigar comes off. It's not that one. This is totally different. Basically, it's like a cherry tobacco fragrance. It's got other things going on, but it's primarily, it's got that cherry tobacco vibe, and it's got good performance. Well done fragrance. Balance is not too overpowering. 6 to 8 hours performance. Really good performing fragrance. One you can cop for about $50. You can cop it in the $50 range to this day. The only problem is I've got multiple bottles of this fragrance, and sometimes when I've copped them, I've noticed I've grabbed a couple where the top notes were turning. And those that never like chase vintage fragrances might not be aware of that. It's where the citrus notes will tend to start to get sour. And it doesn't last. When you spray it, it'll be like that for like the first 5 minutes and it'll go away. But it's just something I want people to know about, because that is one of the hurdles you have to deal with in purchasing vintage fragrances. But this is a great fragrance nonetheless, and one, if you've never, heard of it, I definitely want you guys to be up on it, and it's one of the fragrances I wore a lot in the late 90s. So from the house of Aficionado fragrances, this is Cigar. 1998 release from the house of Fred Hayman. This is Hollywood. I know, very tacky bottle, extremely tacky bottle, kitschy. I get it. Blue juice, almost like, I don't know if that's mouthwash colored or what, but man, I really, really enjoyed this fragrance. It is, what can I say? It's aromatic. It's got juniper, it's got citrus at the top, it's got musk, it's got patchouli, it's got sandalwood in the base. It's just a really well done fragrance. it even has like a like this hint of like it smells like buttered popcorn, and I know that might sound like a put off, but it shouldn't be. This is an artistic creation, and they executed the fragrance, to perfection, and it's one that you can still find reasonably priced. Nobody really talks about the fragrance. I mean, when you see reviews, some people will say it's an amazing fragrance, and other people will say it smells cheap. And I don't agree with that part of it. I think it's a great fragrance. I feel like when you read, if you can find the write-up, there's a write-up about this fragrance online where they talk about, what went into the creation of the fragrance and like the vision they had for it. They executed it like to perfection. It doesn't smell cheap to me. It's not this really heavy fragrance, even though it's got that like buttered popcorn note in it. It wears light, but it feels great. It feels amazing when I wear this fragrance, and I wore it a lot in the late 90s, and to me it's an all-purpose fragrance. You can dress it up and you can dress it down, and it just works. You gotta smell it for yourself, put it on skin, see if it's something that might interest you at all. You can still cop it for about 35 to 50 bucks. Somewhere in that range is where you're gonna find the bottle. Only thing I need to make you guys aware of is that when the fragrance first came out, the distributor manufacturer was Parlux, and it changed to like Victory Incorporated or something like that. And when they took over the manufacturing of the fragrance, the quality went to the bottle is poorly made, the base is poorly made. If you ever look at getting this fragrance, make sure you check out the photos of the fragrance and look at the bottom of the bottle to make sure it says Parlux. If it does not say Parlux, do not purchase the fragrance. But one that I wore a lot in the late 90s from the house of Fred Hayman, this is Hollywood. All right, last fragrance is one from the house of Donna Karan. This is one of the favorites in my collection. This is Unleaded Fuel. Incredible bottle. This bottle was supposed to represent a gear shifter. All right, they made this bottle shape, I want to say in collaboration with a famous race car driver. I think it was Mario Andretti. I know I read that somewhere. My wife actually read the book on Donna Karan recently, and like they almost didn't put this fragrance out, but they did, and they're proud of it. And this is just an amazing fragrance. It's suede, it's cardamom, and it's sage, and it smells so like GQ, like so fashion forward. Like when I smelled it in '95, I was head over heels for this fragrance. I just thought it was so amazing, and it's still one of the favorites. It's probably, as far as my vintage fragrances or my hard to find fragrances, this is probably like the most prized possession in the collection. If you've never smelled it, you can still actually get the little minis. They still sell little minis online for like about 20 bucks. So, but 3.4s, about 300 bucks. You can cop a 1.7 for about 250, 200 to 250 is where you can cop the 1.7. Amazing fragrance. I love it. I'm going to always have it in the collection. I've got 2 bottles, and this was one of the fragrances I wore a lot in the late 90s. So that's it, guys. I hope you liked the video. I'm going to be getting into just individual fragrances going forward, but I just wanted to kick off with the most worn fragrances for myself from the early 90s and the late 90s, and I had a lot of fun putting this together. Comment and let me know what were some of your favorite fragrances of the 90s. I'd love to hear from you. If you've never subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do so. Give me a thumbs up if you feel led to do so, and I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.